about peace?
Well, confidence-building measures have been plentiful in the last 10 years. I mentioned a deal in February.
The strike was overnight.
You want a brief answer, right? As I understand from your initial words. Or you want an answer which is explaining the situation. The proposal by President Trump on 30 days moratorium on the strikes against energy infrastructure was supported by President Putin and observed strictly. This was a confidence-building measure against the policy and action taken by Zelensky regime. As I said several hundred times, civilian energy infrastructure was trapped. Another confidence-building measure was the proposal of President Trump and his team to resume the deal on Black Sea. And the delegations met in Istanbul, in Riyadh. The delegations exchanged the views how this can be implemented in practical terms, and the proposals made by Russia are being considered by the United States. There are many other examples about confidence-building measure, but if you believe that it's only Ukraine who is interested in confidence building, I think a short answer would be this is an illusion.
Do you take President Trump at his word when he says if Russia is unable to make a deal on ending the bloodshed in Ukraine, he'll put secondary tariffs, I think he means sanctions there, on oil coming out of Russia? Or do you think that at this point, the relationship between Russia and America has been rebuilt and that won't happen?
Well, I cannot comment on what you think President Trump meant when he said something.
What do you think he meant when he said secondary tariffs on oil coming out of Russia?
Well, we hear many things coming from President Trump. President Trump said that he's sick and tired of the situation in this settlement, especially yesterday when he commented the statements by Zelensky. And President Trump has his own proposals and has his own style in mentioning those proposals in his public speeches. We concentrate, as I said, on the real negotiations which President Trump supports and instructed his people to continue to engage in these negotiations. I'm sorry, the answer was a bit longish, but it's difficult to explain otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So I ask about the threat of sanctions or secondary tariffs, because you recently said in an interview if you had to personally pick sides, you would keep the existing sanctions in place on Russia. You said you've restructured the economy to be self-sufficient, and there is a growing fear that, quote, cunning Americans will lift sanctions all of a sudden to flood our market with services and technologies. So if that's the case, why should the United States consider lifting sanctions at all?
Why do you ask me? You just quoted my statement, and this statement is clear for me and clear to all those who read it. If you have questions to the American side, how they treat the situation, it is not the right address to raise it with me.
So you want to keep sanctions in place? Is that really the Russian position?
I don't want to re-explain what I explained, I think, in quite clear manner. And you quoted, I think, very close to the real content, yeah. Right. But it was a bit longer than normally you prefer. I know.
Well, back in February, though, one of your colleagues, Kirill Dmitriev, who runs the Sovereign Wealth Fund and has been active in the diplomacy with the United States, said something a bit different. That's why I'm asking for clarification, because he said there is the expectation that American companies would return to the Russian market in the second half of 2025.
Well, the president of Russia commented upon this situation. He said that we have nothing against American company. But those companies who decided to leave their business in Russia might find that their place has been occupied already. But
must now make peace, otherwise the future attacks, he says, would be far greater and much easier. So how is Tehran responding to that threats from Washington? Thank you.
I think it's not up to Iran to respond to that. The whole international community should respond of such a clear threat against the United Nations Charter. Iran has done nothing wrong. We do not understand why Iran should be attacked for a false accusation that Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. It's now more than 20 years that we are trying to prove that our peaceful nuclear program is in fact peaceful and would remain peaceful. We negotiated for a long time with the so-called P5+1, and we came to a deal which the whole world celebrated as an achievement of diplomacy. And then it was the US who withdrew from that deal and reimposed their sanctions and restarted their threats.
Typical US. Typical Esau Edom. Right? Break the contract. Break the agreement. Scripture says never trust an enemy. Right? All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Kodash. And double honor to mighty church, the apostles, the elders, and the bishops of Great Millstone. Shalom to the Akim worldwide that are sincere and serious doing the will of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Kodash. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 1 and 2 to you all. Stay strong and stay mighty. So yeah, that's some world news. Iran fires hypersonic missiles. US forces on maximum alert. Right? Hey man, subscribe to this channel here, boy. Times no world. Subscribe to this channel here. So that we're live right now. And this one from before. I had it just now there. Putin declares war. I had it there just now, man.
I hear you, Gabar. I hear you, my brother. You're going to get your revenge, bro. You're going to get your revenge.
Mr. Minister, how do you assess the West's stance on Israel
The
massacres?
mighty man
No
of
one
Babylon
seems to
has
mention
performed to fight.
Israel's allegedly
See?
illegal
That,
nuclear weapons. The German
remember
chancellor
back in the
even
day,
said
man, they used to have them
Israelis do
commercials.
the dirty work for us.
For
All
American
the
colleagues
Right, okay, yeah.
to what we tell them.
Russia
This has been
warns the
done
world is
during
pushing the Middle East to get
negotiations.
nukes.
They're confidential as any serious negotiation. And they know our position, and as I quoted Marco Rubio,
So we in the time of war, right? We are definitely in the time of war.
reasons for what is going on.
This world is about to
Nobody in Washington
go through
the finger to do
a
the same
drastic
step to try to understand
time,
Russia during the Biden
right?
administration.
The Lord is about to shake the heavens.
This implies that the dialogue
It's right.
continues, that the dialogue is supported by the United States, and
Cain was a thief, a liar, and a murderer.
All right, Vladimir Putin here. This is live, all right? Putin, emergency address. World War III fears skyrocket amid Middle East crisis.
Storage facilities in the region are filling up with oil that cannot be exported, or is very difficult to export, or very expensive to export. It is obvious that a complete switch of Middle Eastern oil supplies without using the Strait of Hormuz is currently unrealistic. Changing logistics will not only take a long time, but will also require significant infrastructure expenditures, expansion of marine terminals, and so on. And of course, it will be associated with high political risks that have not gone away. Consumers need oil today.
Right, but I can't pick up the phone and call Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, like you can. What plans are you making for the two to meet?
look, I hope your listeners understand very well that it is not ethical for a foreign minister to prejudge, to presume what presidents might or might not discuss.
All that you can be, India.
But you think it would be good for the two leaders to meet soon? Do you expect that's what Envoy Witkoff is negotiating?
We're always in favor of meeting with people who are ready for a dialogue.
All right, so we are about to enter into the climax of World War III, but before that happens, the mark of the beast must be made mandatory. You understand? That great hour of temptation, right? Shalom.